Hey designer, Alex here, welcome to the channel and welcome to this new video series here on the channel in which we are going to talk about website design in Adobe XD. In this 4-part video series we are going to create website design for travel agency in Adobe XD. We are going to start with paper wireframes and then bring those paper wireframes to Adobe XD to create wireframes which we can share with our client. Then after that we are going to create design from those wireframes by adding images, icons, colors and more. And finally, in the last video of the series we are going to create different interactions, different animations and different hover effects. These videos are inserted from my new course Website Design in Adobe XD Travel Agency, and you can check it out on my website with a massive discount. Simply enter coupon code YouTube and you're going to get that massive discount. Or you can also check out my membership where you can get all of my courses, design products, product files for my YouTube videos, mentorship and much more. Links to everything I mentioned are going to be down in the description below, so you can check them out. Also, there's going to be a link to this playlist down in the description below as well. In this fourth and final video from this video series, we are going to create prototypes. So in the first video, we created paper wireframes. Then in the second video, we brought those wireframes into Adobe XD where we created wireframes which we can then easily share with our clients, teammates and developers. In the previous and third video from this video series, we created design from those wireframes by adding images, colors, shadows and more. And now in this final video from this video series, we are going to include animations. We are also going to include transitions. We are going to include hover effects just to show to our client how the finished product might end up looking, and also to show our developers in which directions should code go. So therefore they are going to easily understand how to turn our designs into code. So without any further ado, let's jump into the video. Now finally it comes the fun part, and we are going to animate what we created so far. Basically what we are going to do is we are going to add different states for different components. We are going to include different information here and there, and I'm going to show you all of these additional things that you can do to spice up your designs even more and to make it even more interesting than it already is, and to show to your clients the potential that your design can have. I'm going to cut some corners here and there in this final video just to increase its speed and reduce its length. So I'm going to copy and paste a few things here and there from my original design just so I don't bore you guys too much, because I think I already showed you all of the main things in the wireframe and design part of this series. And in this video I'm going to show you obviously all of these animations, but as I said, for example, for these European destinations I'm going to copy and paste the 4 remaining here just so that we can include the animation, and for this top destination I'm going to also do that for this section. So let's jump inside and start creating and start animating. So obviously I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to start with this button. So this is the small button. I'm going to hit Ctrl K to create it as a component, and I'm going to create a hover state, call it hover. And for the hover state, what I'm going to do is bring back that button color. So if you remember from the previous video, it's at 0 opacity, so now it's at 100, and I'm going to simply increase its height to here, and I'm going to decrease the visibility of our original button outline to, let's go with 0, something like that. And we can obviously turn the preview one straight away, see how it looks like, and I think it looks just fine. Now let's move on to our actual hero image, and I'm going to keep my hero text as it is, but I'm going to actually remove my button to here, and I'm going to call this hero text 1 and make 2 more copies. This is going to be hero text 2, and this is going to be hero text number 3. So this first one can be, for example, Beijing. So I'm going to hide these two. So first one is Beijing, like that, and this text can write something like explore mystical Beijing, like that. And I'm going to show my text number 3, and let's see, For example, for that one, maybe I can include something like Hurghada because we mentioned it a lot. So this is going to be Hurghada, and this can say something like magical Egypt. I'm going to copy and paste the text in just to save ourselves a bit of time. So now that we have those three, what we can do is simply use our rectangle tool. And because Hurghada is our widest text, we can simply outline it to here, for example, something like that. And we can reduce the opacity of this rectangle just so that we can see where our mask is going to go. And I can lower it down to here, for example, something like this. And I'm going to call this mask. Then I'm going to position it not to here, but just above our text. And I'm going to hit Shift Control M or Shift Command M on a Mac, and I'm going to call this text mask like that. And what I'm going to do is use 2 and 3 and simply nudge them out of the way like this so that we can just see Beijing. Then I'm going to duplicate the hero image 2 more times. This is going to be hero image number 1. This is going to be hero image number 2. So Paris is going to stay as it is. And this is going to be hero image number 3 because that's going to be our Hurghada. So for the hero image number 1, as we said, we are going to include Beijing. So I'm going to find that image, drag and drop it into place. There we go. I'm going to hide it. Second one is Paris, which is fine. And third one is going to be Hurghada. So let me quickly locate that image on my computer. There we go. Drag and drop. So now we have Hurghada, we have Paris, and we have Beijing to correspond well with all of our changes. And finally, once we include back the color overlay, you can see how nice that looks. So finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my items from here. So text mask, I can position my button below. I'm going to leave the nav as, where it is because, as I said in the first video, we're not animating the nav in this YouTube series, but we are animating it in the course. So if you're interested, you can jump inside of the course. And I also decided just to cut the things short here and there. I'm not going to animate all of these drop downs. I'm going to animate just this first one. And I'm going to also show you how to animate this search bar as well as this button, just for the time's sakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bottom nav BG, move it up to here, select my images, and you can also group these if you want to. We'll call it images like this, and select all of it, hit Control G, make sure you selected everything like that. I'm going to call this hero image and hit Control K to create a component. So now on this component, what I'm going to do is you can lower down the opacity of these two images if you want to, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply create the state number 2 or image 2, for example. So this hero image 2, we are going to reduce the opacity of this first one like this. So Paris is showing. Then we can jump inside our text mask and move our second text into place by simply holding Shift and up arrow until they meet right here like this. And then you can move the text number 1 and simply move it out of the place to something like this, just so it's out of the way. Next, let's create the third state, image 3. And for the image 3, basically the same thing. So you can start with the text this time, move it into place like this. There we go. Move the text number 2 out of the way. Align it with this one or something like that. And finally, for the images, lower this down in opacity. And there we go. Now we have to animate them, and to do that, we will have to create tap points for our arrows. So jump to default state inside of your hero image, arrows, and we have to create tap points because these already have hover states included inside of them. So let's use our rectangle, and we're going to use tap points for these just so that we can animate them. So 56, let's go with, I don't know, 58 by 58, for example, just so I know what it is. And you can lower down the opacity of those ones. I'm going to call it tap point. Hit Control C, Control V or hit Control D, whatever you want. I'm going to bring back my opacity just so I can see where it is, and simply position it right here on top of this right one, and simply move it right here. Now that we have those tab points, you can align them wherever you want, you can place them wherever you want. Now that we have them, we can jump inside and animate them, and because we did it in the default state, if I switch to image number 2, go to arrows, you can see they are there because they simply transitioned to our from our default state to our other states. Now let's go to prototype. What I'm going to do right here is simply use arrows and use the right tab point, click on it, and I'm going to use tab, I'm going to use auto animate, choose a state, so image number 2, because if we didn't include the tab point, it would show us hover state of the arrow itself, but like this it shows us the state of the overall hero image. So image number 2, I'm going to go with easy in out and something nice and slow like 0.6 seconds. And now that I switch to image number 2, Adobe XD is going to remember my settings. So when I go to this one, it's going to remember everything, but we have to choose default state, and for this tab point you have to click and choose image number 3. Then finally go to image number 3, and on this one I'm just going to use this one to bring me back to image number 2. So use auto animate and image number 2 like this. Then we can go to default state, click right here and see the magic in action. Because this tab point is translucent, so you can see through it, and we reduce the opacity down to 0. Basically it shows just as a placeholder there, which is perfect what we wanted. So basically when I click right here, you can see it animates our text beautifully and everything is showing as it should. So we have Beijing, Paris, and finally Hurghada, and as I said, it's just there as a placeholder. Now let's jump inside and move back to design, because I want to show you on this bottom nav, I want to show you how to animate these destinations, animate the search bar and animate the button. So let's start with the button. So let's call it apply button, for example. Hit Control K and simply create hover state like this, call it hover. Inside of the hover, I'm just going to change the hover color because we have it, so hover blue. So that's the only thing which is going to change there. For the search, I'm going to leave it here for now and let's work on our destinations. So for the destinations, which are here, let's quickly organize them. So journey type, activities, search, and let's just leave search for there for now. So let's work on our destinations. We are going to need a background. So hit Control D on this one, call it destinations BG, and we're going to reduce its size to something like this, for example. Yep, because it's going to cover inside, and I'm going to bring it into here and simply move it down like so. What I'm going to need is to duplicate my text inside of my destinations, and I'm going to just make sure that I use all of those colors. But before I do, perhaps I should change this. Let's see how it looks like with the dark gray. No, I don't like it. I'm going to change it back to light gray and just leave it there. So what we are going to do is hit Control D on this destinations text. I'm going to position it right here. Make sure it's, for example, 20 down. And I'm also going to move it right here so it aligns with our icon here. Next, I'm going to create a divider. So hit destinations BG, hit Control D, and I'm going to lower it down to 1, for example. And I'm going to change the color to dark gray or light gray, actually, because that's the one we used. And let's position it right here. And let's move it 10 pixels down, for example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it here so it lines up with my text. And I'm actually going to jump inside of here to this destination BG, and I'm going to expand it down just so that you can see what's going on here. So with our divider, which we are going to actually call divider, like that, I'm going to also reduce its width to somewhere around here because I don't want it to go all the way to here. And I can even be precise and move it 40 from here as well. So let's position this to here, 1, 2, 3, 4. and I can select my divider, simply expand it here, and there we go. So now it's 40 on both sides. And now that that's completed, I can move it 20 down actually, so that we have equal spacing. I'm going to select my text and my divider, click on the repeat grid, and I can simply expand them down to as many of these as I want. For example, to somewhere around here, let's say, right there, just so that it cuts this bottom one out. And what I'm going to do is select my first in the grid, so this one, and I have a text file right here. So I have just a basic list of countries, and I'm going to open up that text file, and you can see France, Spain, United States, China, and so on. So all of these destinations. And I also have a list of cities, so you can see Bangkok, Paris, Dubai, and so on. So this is just a notepad text file. As you can see, default on Mac is going to be something different, but basically whatever you have on your system, which is the default, Adobe XD is going to work with it. So what I'm going to do is simply drag and drop this file, which I have in my folder, like this, and simply position it to the first item. When you paste and when you release, it's going to paste in all of those things, and it's going to repeat them to as many of them as you want. So I'm going to name that repeat grid to destinations, like that. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to cut it. So I'm going to click right here where it says vertical scroll. And when you do that, you are just telling Adobe XD where you want your users to scroll. So for example, I'm going to cut it somewhere around here maybe. And then I'm going to use my destination BG and position it somewhere around here, let's say. Then I'm going to include that shadow. So 5, 5, 10. And I'm going to reduce this back to 5 like this. And let's call this destinations like this. And you can also increase the height of it because Bangkok is the first one. Let's bring it to somewhere around here, for example. And there we have it. We have created our first drop down. As I said in the course, we are obviously creating all of these, but just for the time's sakes, I'm just going to create this one. Now what we have to do is animate it and create our components. So for the destinations, what we can do is create a mask. So hit Control D for the destinations BG. I'm going to bring this down to 70 because if you remember, that's the height of all of these, and I'm going to call it mask. Bring it up to here. So it's going to mask this destinations and this BG. And I'm also going to bring my destinations BG back. So just remember, this is 516. Go back to 70. Select all of these, Shift Control M to mask them. This is going to be mask. And now let's convert it to component, hit Control K. And now let's create new state, which is going to be clicked or opened, however you want. Let's change this back to 516. Like this, and simply bring our mask down to somewhere around here. Hey designers, sorry to interrupt myself, but I just wanted to quickly mention that you can get this practice file alongside every course and product I have ever made in my membership. You can get this practice file if you want to follow along this and every future video I make. A link is going to be down in the description below, so you can check it out if you're interested. Now let's get back to the video. What we can also do is jump back to the default state and expand our mask a little bit to this side, just so that we can see that shadow. So just a little bit outside. And now when I go back to the clicked state, choose my mask, you can see where the destination BG is, where the mask is. I'm simply going to expand it a little bit to this side, just so that we can see that, that drop shadow. Destination BG mask, which is fine. And one final thing which I want to change actually is go back to default state. Right here on our destination BG, I'm going to hide our shadow. And on the clicked state, I'm going to make sure that the shadow is showing like this. So now with the animation, everything should work nice and seamlessly. So speaking of animation, let's animate it. Go to prototype. We can click right here. From default state, we're going to move on to tap, auto animate, choose a state which is clicked, easy in out, 0.6 seconds. And from clicked, they can click whatever they want right here. Tap, auto animate, go back to default state 0.6, which is great. And let's bring it back to default state and let's see our result and see how it looks like. One more thing, you can animate this upwards if you want to, and that's something that you're looking for, then great. But I found that most users will simply scroll through here and then hover, for example, on this one. So let's bring it back because we didn't. Select this one, go to default state and then hit preview. So you can see how the hover effect looks like, really quite simple. And finally, when you click right here, you can see it opens up. We have this nice drop shadow. You can tap whatever you want, it's going to come back. And finally, and most important of all, when you start scrolling right here, you can see all of these additional options because we are in the scroll group and we created all of this using the repeat grid. So you can see how nice and great that function is. Now let's go ahead and create our search. So once again, hit Ctrl D, this is going to be search BG. And let's bring it back to somewhere around here. I'm going to move it 40 obviously to the left. And on this side, I'm going to close it off where our button is. So right here. And I'm going to, let's see where the search is. Here it is. I'm going to move this into here. There we go. And one final thing I want to include right here is that plus icon or close icon, however you want to call it. So let's find it here, and you can also search right here. So close. There we go. Drag and drop it to here, and you can cut this off like this. So I'm going to position it here in the center like this, inside of our search obviously. I'm going to move it 20 to here, let's say. I'm going to lower down the opacity and I'm going to move the entire search right here to the top. Hit Ctrl K to create our main component and then create clicked state. And then what I'm going to do is simply move these two. So move my search icon and search for trips. Move it all the way to here, but as you can see, it doesn't work. So let's just do these two. It still doesn't work for some reason. Let's do it one by one. So position it here. Search icon and search for trips. Move it to here. Make sure it's 40. Finally, show our close icon and simply rotate it until we have an X for close, like that. And there we have it. So now let's animate him. So go back to default state, prototype. Once they click right here, we're going to use exactly the same settings. Go to clicked state. Once they click anywhere on the field for the search, we can go back to default state. And let's see how that looks like. So when we preview it, click right here. You can see how that looks like, and you can see this rotating and showing and this moving really nicely. And finally, for here, what we can do is change this text because it's already selected. So go back to design inside of our clicked state. What I'm going to do is click right here on this text and change it to dark gray. And I can also do that for the icon itself. So I can click on it and change it to dark gray because now users can select this and search and do whatever they want with it. So default state and clicked state. Let's now move on to these cards because these cards are obviously going to take us the biggest amount of time. And because as you remember, we created these as components, we would have to create them again. But in my course, I created this to be the first component, then added hover state and then changed them everywhere. But in this example, I'm going to show you different approach. So what I'm going to do is create the mask for this arrow. Hit Ctrl D, call it mask or arrow mask, however you want to call it. And I'm going to simply position it to be something like this. So width is going to be at 10, just so that we miss our arrow. I'm going to hit Shift Ctrl M on these three. So let's select them, Shift Ctrl M to create our mask, arrow mask, like that. And what I'm going to do is hit Control C to copy it from here, jump inside my Tokyo, inside of my arrow, Control V, and simply make sure that this arrow aligns with this arrow like this, and then simply remove these two like so. Or what you can also do is create a component from that, but I'm just going to simply show you this particular method. So let's move on to where we are. Let's move on to Bali, and I'll have to organize this in just a few seconds. So hit Control V, paste it in, and simply position it to here and then to the very edge. Remove these two like this. There we have it. And let's do that for all three of them. And now that I've done that, let's create our components. So once again, I'm repeating what I said already. In the course, I'm creating a single component from this Hurghada card, and then creating child components from that particular component. But in this YouTube series, I went with this approach just to show you that it's possible as well, especially if you have multiple layouts changing here and there. But once again, in the course, because we don't, I just created one component and simply went with it. So what I'm going to do is hit Control K on this one, Control K on this one, Control K on this one. So I'm just creating components from all of these cards. And what I'm going to do is actually select these and this button, Control G, and call it first minute. And then select these other ones and call it last minute. Just so that I know where everything is. So here, Paris, Krakow, Taipei, and here we have Hurghada, Tokyo, and Bali. So for each of these, as you're probably guessing, I'm going to create hover state, call it hover, copy this text so I don't have to type in all the time. So simply create hover, and once again I'm repeating myself all over the place. Inside of the course, I'm creating simply one of these, and I'm just changing the overall hover state of them as well. So hover right here, like that. For the hover state, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the brightness of the shadow, so darkness of the shadow there is. So make sure you are on the hover states for each of these. I'm going to open them up all, and I'm going to click on my special offer card BG, and I'm going to create 8% right here. Click right here, then right here 8%. And the reason I'm doing this is just to bring some more visual interest to these cards, nothing really that major. So it's going to be noticeable, especially with the effect we are going to apply in just a second. But basically that's the only thing which we are going to do with these cards. So 8. And now that that's finished, once we are in the hover state, as we are for each of these, I'm going to simply increase the size of our images. So double click inside to jump inside the image mask, then hold Shift, Alt, and left click on your mouse, something like this. And I'm going to do the same for all of these. So simply double click inside, and you have to jump inside the image mask. Depending of your image, you obviously need to increase or decrease them a little bit. So really play around with them. And now the last thing which we are going to do, so we have a shadow, we have the image zoom effect. We are going to obviously reveal our arrows. So jump inside of our arrow mask and simply bring the mask outside to here. So it's 82 in width. I'm going to do the same for all of these. So 82 like this, and let's move on to this one. And this is what why the approach I'm using in the course is obviously much better, because you just create this once in the first hover and then they apply throughout your design for all the rest of them. So now that we've finished them, let me quickly close all of them down like this, Bali, Tokyo, and finally Hurghada. And I'm going to move on to default states for each of these, just so that we can see what we have so far. Like that, hit preview. enlarge this just a little bit and then move down, and you can see when I start hovering, images are zooming, icon is revealing itself, and we have that nice background shadow working nicely with us. You can obviously include different animations if you want to. You can add even more animations if you want to, but as I said, I'm going to keep things simple and I'm going to leave them as they are right here. One more thing I purposely left inside are these rounded edges around our images on these inner sides. I didn't do that in the course, I purposely left them straight, but I just want to show you both options. So if you jump inside the course through the link below, and I think you should really do that, you can purchase the course by a massive discount, or you can simply enroll in my membership and you can get the course that way with all the other courses, design products, mentorship, and so on. You are going to see the difference between these two approaches, and I just want to show you different options that you have. So now basically this section is fully completed. What we need to do finally is to create these big buttons. So I'm going to come in right here, just call it big button, hit Ctrl K and create a hover state like that. And for the hover state, and you can simply see this approach with the button and imagine it with the rest of these cards. Hit 0 to bring it back, and inside of the hover state, what I'm going to do is change this to white like this. And now if I switch between default and hover, you can see how that works like. And also on hover, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce back the color of my border for the button BG like that. And now basically that's it. I'm going to go back to default state, and now we have our big button. So we can jump in right here, slide over, and simply use our big button, which is right here. Drag and drop it into place, position it to here, nudge it until it fits, and simply remove that original big button like that. And instead of all first, I'm going to jump inside of here, call it all last, Control C to copy my text, jump inside the hover and change this to all last minute. And we will have to do that for all of our buttons, obviously. So all of them are child components, and you can see if I select this one, it has filled in diamond. But if I select this one, it has the hollowed out diamond. If I zoom all the way into here, you can see it, because filled in diamond means it's the parent component, it's the main component, and empty diamond means it's just child component. So that's it for this section for the video. I'm not going to do too much. I can do the hover effect if I want to, but because I have this arrow right here already animated, I'm just going to move on to the European destination and let's create some animations there. So the first step here, because we already have them set up, if I take you back to Europe card, you can see that we have this default component is in the default state. Let's quickly adjust this arrow right here. So let's do the same thing like we did previously. Hit Ctrl D, create a mask, and make sure that we move it, for example, until it's the width of 10. And we can even adjust that to here. Position it to the very edge right here, and simply hit Shift Ctrl M to create a mask or arrow mask like we did previously. I really don't know what's wrong with my typing today. Let's try that one more time. I actually have to change my keyboard. There we go. And now that we've done that, as you can see, it's the same in all of these. What I want is to create this to be a hover state. So let's add a hover state. And before we move on, let's quickly check and see. So when I click hover, you can see that it changes from the London card to hover card. And you can see that it expands a little bit. So we are going to make some changes really quickly. So if I go to default state right here, and when I go to hover, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click inside and basically make exactly the same changes. So first of all, let's work on our BG. So let's just increase it to 8%. It's going to update everywhere in all of the cards. And finally here, I'm going to double click and enlarge our image a little bit, and inside of the content, let's change the arrow. And let's bring our mask back to here. There we go. Like that. And let's see, so this is the default state. Sorry, I should do that in the hover state, not in the default state. So go back, expand it to here. There we go. So we see the change actually. And let's go to the hover state and let's quickly hide this, bring it back with the arrow mask. Change it back to 10 like this. And finally for the BG right here, I can go back to 5. So this is the default state, this is the hover state. So now in the hover state, let's make those changes. So let's see, this should be 8 like that. This should be zoomed in, and I can zoom it in even more just to improve the look of that. Finally hover right there. There we go. And now let's quickly check and see. So this is the default state, this is the hover state. So everything looks as it should. So now for all of these, what I can do is simply jump inside when I'm in my default state. I can select all of them, hit Control C, and I don't know why these appear to be down so far. So let's see, this is 687 in height. I don't know why, so 687 like this. I can jump inside of this one. Let's see, 687, which is great. 687, which is great. I don't know why this appeared so different, but it doesn't matter. What matters is to simply copy them instead of the BG. So content and destination card. Go to the hover state and simply hit Control V. And then I'm going to remove this image. I'm going to remove this Paris content, which is this one at the bottom. And I'm going to bring this back to 687 like it was. And basically now I have all of my settings here. So I can jump inside my arrow mask, expand it back to here. So 82. I can jump inside my image, double click inside and simply zoom it anywhere I want. And this is going to be at 8, which is great, which is what we want. So let's switch between them and see how they look like. I think they look good. So let's quickly just check that one more time. So 687 for the background, and for the hover state, let's see, it's 687, which is great. So let's now move on to this one as well. So we have Rome here, so destination card and the content, Control C. Jump inside to your hover state, Control V. I'm going to remove the Paris image. I'm going to remove the Paris content. This should be 687, which it is. Click right here, double click, and simply enlarge our image a bit. We should see changes here. So 8, which is great. And finally, just for the arrow, extend that arrow mask outwards to here, like that. And finally, I'm going to do the same for the Prague, and I'm going to pause the video here so I don't bore you. And now that I've done that, I can move on and show you the rest of them. So what I'm going to do actually is, as I said at the beginning of this video, copy and paste my other cards in. So I'm going to position them here, make sure they line up with each other, and I'm going to simply ungroup them from here. And because you can see they are link components because they are coming from my original design, I'm going to simply right click, make local for all of these components, and I'm going to select these ones and my right and my star, let's see, so like this, and hit delete, because let's delete these ones actually, because I already have them and I don't need them to be right here. I did this just to save time, as I said, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a scrollable group. So what I'm going to do is choose my destinations and click right here to create a scroll group, and I'm going to create this edge right here, to match the edge of my grid line like this. And I'm going to simply, you can put it right here if you want to, but I'm going to expand it to here just so that the users can see the entire thing. So I'm going to select this name, click copy, paste it in with my destinations like that. And before we get to animating, we need to edit a few things. So first of all, we need to change this button. So go back, find our big button, drag and drop it into place, position it right here. And if I go back, what we need is all Europe trips. So I'm going to remove this one. So all Europe trips, Control C, and then jump inside the hover state, change it here as well. So all Europe trips, there we go. And actually this hover color is not the right color. So what I'm going to do is edit my main component, which is this one, go to my hover state. And for the hover state, button color should actually be this hover color. So therefore we now change the hover color for all of our buttons throughout our design. So if I take you back to here, jump inside my Euro trips, and you can see hover is now this color. Now I need to jump inside my Rome right here, default state, and you can see that I give them names for my card right here. So I can do that here as well. So this is Paris. This is London, this is Rome, and finally this is Prague. And you can do edit of the main component. You can simply, because this is the default state, you can edit it here, and once again they are going to propagate, not on these ones because obviously I paste them in from my original design, but you can just imagine that if you duplicated them and create all the same changes, then it will do. Finally, what we need to create are these tap points for our arrows. So once again, I'm going to simply create something like this, call it tap point like that, and simply reduce the opacity to 0, Control D, and simply move it right here over this arrow to somewhere around here, like that. And there we have it. Now what we can do is we can create a component from this entire section. So I'm going to hit Control K to create a new component, and now we have components inside of components. So we have components of these cards, we have components of these arrows, and finally we have component for this button. So we're going to simply create a new state, call it clicked, and it's going to basically indicate where when users click on this tap point, they are going to go to the clicked state. Inside of the clicked state, what's going to happen is we're going to jump inside our destinations, simply hold our shift key and move them all to here until they line up with this edge basically. That's the only thing which is going to happen with this. And let's now animate them. So hit prototype. Inside of the prototype, we're going to hit a tap point, which is this one. And we're going to go to clicked state, easy now, 0.6 seconds, which is fine. And simply select Europe, clicked state, and I'm going to go back to my arrows, tap point, click right here, and I can go to default state right here. What's that going to allow me to do basically is switch between my states by simply choosing my arrows, and users can also click and drag this as I'm going to show you. But I just noticed as I'm talking that this right arrow does not have any hover effect on it, so I can simply click on it and go. Let's see what we have right here. So we have hover ease out 0.3, so I'm going to use the same settings. So click on it, instead of tap, go hover, choose the state of hover, ease out 0.3 like that. And now we're going to have the same settings in both of our states. So let's preview it, see how it looks like with these European destinations. And obviously you can imagine in the course we're creating these for all continents, so you can just see how it works for all of these continents. So when I hover right here and click, it's going to transition to these cards, and obviously all of these cards have exactly the same effects as our original cards that we created. So you can see the hover and the background shadow and so on, and basically users can also click and drag between them because it's a scrollable group. Basically that's it for this section. For this right here, the only thing which I'm going to do is change the button So locate our big button, there we have it, drag and drop it into place, position it right here, simply move it right here, and it's going to say get a free quote. Like that, and I'm going to jump to my hover state, get a free quote like that. Let's see just if it's in the center. It is, which is great. Go back to default state, and there we have it. Now for this one, obviously you can just imagine that we can create multiple options with these. So I'm going to show you one, because we created them as components, if you remember. So we created this component, and basically what we can do is create hover state. So for the hover state, what we can create is simply that background. So we can bring it to 8, for example, like that. And we can also zoom in our images, but I'm doing that in the course, but I'm not going to do that here, because I just want to show you both options once again, in case you just enroll in the course. So because we edited it in main component, it should apply to all of these other components. So you can see that it did, which is great, but we have to still change these things like we did previously. So what I'm going to do, because we have the Maldives, I'm going to jump inside my lake district and use my destination card and my content, Control C, go to my hover state, hit Control V. It's going to do the same thing that it did before. So just remove the Maldives content, and let's see, card is 596. And if I see right here, 596, which is great. So we can now zoom in with this image, and I can actually show you exactly the same effects that I had in the course. So when I go to hover, double click, zoom in a little bit, I can go to default state, and now on the Tuscany, I can do the same thing. So copy these two, go to the hover, Control V, and then remove the original information for the Maldives. There we go, 596, which is fine. And finally, just zoom in on this image a little bit, like so. Finally, what I can do is do the same thing like I did previously. So Maldives, this is going to be Lake District. And finally, this is Tuscany. And I'm going to do the same thing like I did previously with all of my other designs. Basically, I'm going to copy 3 of the ones which I created in my original design, paste them in right here. I'm going to align them like so. I'm going to ungroup them like this. So you can see Mont Saint-Michel, Sydney, Cappadocia, and it's going to do the same thing that it did previously. You can see that it placed it in right here, which is fine. And I'm just going to right click and make a local or unlink components basically. Let's see if I can make them local right here. I cannot. So I would just have to leave them here. Let's see if this will work right here. So right click, make local. And let's see if that changed. It did, which is great. And now what I can do is exactly the same thing that we did previously. So top section, locate your arrows, right arrow. And what I need is prototype. So I'm going to click, add hover, choose a state, hover state, ease out 0.3, which is great. And from hover, I need to go back to the default state, which is the thing I actually forgot to animate here, but it doesn't matter. So let's just move on. So what we need to create are these tap points. So let's do that. So simply create something like this. I'm going to call it tap point. Nice and simple. Control D, move it just on top of this one. Tap point, move it right here. Select both of them, hit 0 2 times, and now we cannot see them anymore. So now that that's completed, what I can do is do the same thing like I did previously for the top destinations, Control K. And before I move on with my animation, what I want to do is do the same thing. So I'm going to create a scroll group, and I'm going to come right here, cut it to my grid line like this, and I'm going to expand this, and you can also cut it wherever you want and position it wherever you want, but I found that usually it works best when it's all the way to the edge of the screen, and it indicates to your users that there is actually something else to be clicked on. So now that that's completed, what we can do is actually go ahead and create a new state, call it clicked, like that. And inside of the clicked state, obviously same thing, so just move these three right to here, like that. And now it's time to animate these, so I'm going to go to top section, arrows, right tap point. I'm going to click on it, so we're going to use tap, auto animate, clicked state, easy in out, and 0.6 seconds, like that. And when we move on to clicked state, we're going to do the same thing once again. So arrows, tap point, which is this one, move on to default state. These are the same, which is great. And finally, I can hit preview and scroll all the way down to there. Like that, you can see that we have these nice animations. And when I hover and click, it's going to transition to here. And it's going to bring me to here, which is fine, and it works great. Now let's move on and create our testimonials. Now for the testimonials, because we have these cards, what I'm going to do is simply create a stack like this. I'm going to change it to be in this direction, and I'm going to make sure it's 60. But before all of that, let's actually go back a few steps like this. I'm going to make some changes before I do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually put them inside of the other group. So I'm going to group these, call them testimonial cards, like that, and then put that in the stack like this. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these, if it allows me to do that, like that, and then move these out of the way. I don't know why it did that, so let's actually go back a few steps. So what I'm going to do actually is do the other way around. So I'm going to move them myself and make sure they are 60 apart, like this, and finally move this last one. Make sure it's 60, like that, and then put them in a stack and see what that does finally. And what I can also do is create the scroll group, and instead of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to this grid line right here, and then this one I'm going to cut right around here so that users don't see this car, but they still see the shadow of this. So I'm going to call it testimonial cards, just so that we know what it is. And now before we move on, let's quickly animate that arrow so it doesn't bother us later. And I don't know why that happens, but it happened in the course as well. So I'm going to go with hover right here, choose the state of hover, ease out 0.3, like that. And when we are at the hover, I can go back to default state, ease out 0.3, like that. Finally, let's jump to design and let's change this to default state. I'm going to also create those tap points, and you can see how this can be improved by simply creating first ones and then creating tap points for them. But I just showed you this approach. You can create that on your own, and I actually recommend you to do that because it's going to save you a bunch of time, as you see right here. So now that that's completed, we have to work on our text, and basically the text is going to be the same thing as the one at the hero section. So what I'm going to do is create a few copies. So this is for the 01, this is for the dash. So 01, 02, let's see why it doesn't work. 01, 02, 03, 04, because we are going to have 4 sliders. This is for the dash, and this is for the number 4. So now I have to go ahead and change all of these. All of them are left aligned, which is fine. So 0 number 1, I'm going to hide it. This is going to be 0, number 2. This is going to be 0, number 3. 0, 4. This is going to be for the dash, like that. And just keep the dash here, it doesn't matter for now. And finally, this is 0, number 4. Now I'm going to move the 4 right here. I'm going to move the dash right here. And let's see, we can position it to be 10 from number 4, for example. I'm going to select these two and make sure that it's 10 as well right here, because I'm choosing from number 4 and all of these other numbers have a bit of a different width. So we are going to play around with that as well. I'm going to show you that in just a second. So we can bring all of them back. And what I'm going to do is create a rectangle, obviously, once again. So somewhere around here, I think it's good. And you can obviously narrow it down to remove these two because they are not inside. Something like this. So the overall height of this text, we can call it text mask. Like that. Position it right here. Shift Control M. And I'm going to position these 4 in with the mask. And move these two out so they stay out. Call it mask, or you can simply put all of them inside of the mask. It doesn't really matter because these two are not going to change. So let me actually show you that. You can extend the mask like this, Shift Control M on all of them, and they are going to stay right here. They are not going to change. So as I said, it doesn't really matter if you include them or not. So you can do that whatever way you want. I'm going to move them down like this. So 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, this is just the first one, and I'm going to leave that in. And obviously you can see the pattern here, we are going to change them. So let's create this now as a component. So Control K, and on the second state, state 2 or second state, however you want, what we're going to do is we're going to move in our testimonial cards, and we're going to position the second card in. And just make sure to be precise where you put it, like this. Then we're going to jump inside our text mask and position number 2 in place, like this, and then move number 1 out of the way. Close everything up. Create a state number 3, like this, and do the same thing one more time. So for the testimonials, I'm going to move in my cards to place. Once again, just zoom in to make sure that you are on a dot like this. And for the text mask, let's see, 03 is going to come into place. Just make sure that they line correctly like this, and move 02 out of the way like this. And finally, let's create a fourth state. So state 4. And the last testimonial is going to come right here. So let's just see, because this image is a bit lighter. There we go. It looks fine. And finally, for the text mask, let's apply that change as well to it, like that. And I'm going to move number 3 out of the way. And there we have it. Basically, we have created our testimonials, and you can see the pattern right here. Basically, you are just doing the same thing over and over again. You're just changing a few things here and there. So for the prototype inside of our default state, let's go to the arrows, right tap point, click on it. We're going to use tap, auto animate state 2, ease in out 0.6 seconds, like that. And then we can go to the state 2, open up our arrows, tap point. So this is going to take us to state 3, while this tap point is going to bring us back to default state. State 3. So left arrow is going to take us back to state number 2, while the right arrow is going to take us to step number 4. And finally, in the state 4, we're just going to use left tap point, which is going to take us to the state 3, using the same settings that we did. So default state, and let's preview what we have so far. I can jump all the way down to here. So when you hover, click, it's going to transition, and you can see the transitions between our numbers. And obviously you can go back, and I made an error here in the fourth one because this should go to state number 3 and it goes to state number 2. So that's the arrow. I can go back to here, go back to arrows, tap point, and it takes me to state number 3 instead of state number 2. And that's basically it for this section. Let's now move on to these sections right here. So I'm going to call this wellness card. I'm going to hit Control K on this one and Control K on this one. And I'm going to create hover states for each 3. So hover, sorry, for all 3, not for each 3. And let's do that for all of them. So if I jump to here, click right here, create a hover state, and click right here, hover. What I'm going to do is that zoom in effect on all hovers. So if I jump inside of my wellness, I'm going to hide this for a second, double click on my image and simply zoom it in a little bit. And what I can do is also I can change this to 8 to keep the same consistency as we did previously. So I can do the same thing with my cruises. I can first of all change this to 8 like this, and I can double click on my image and expand it just a little bit to achieve this zoom effect, bring it back to default state, and finally do the same for skiing. So 8, hide this, double click, Shift Control M, zoom it in a little bit, and there we have it. So now that this is completed, what's left for us to do is let's quickly add this button right here. So let's find it, big button, there it is. I'm going to bring it in. So get a free quote is what it should say. Let's simply change the positions. So copy our text, jump inside hover, and let's actually bring it back to default state like so. And there we have it. The last thing for us to do in this design is this section. So in this section, as I said, we're going to animate these areas, and we're going to click, rotate these icons and basically show all of that. But before we do, I just want to finish these 2 buttons because they are really quite simple. So for this subscribe button, I can simply change this to subscribe btn and create a component from it. So hit Control K, and inside of the hover state like that, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to change the color to hover blue like this. Go back to default state, and there we have it. And now in this questions and answers where the text is, big button, so I'm going to bring it back in. Let's locate it. Here it is, drag and drop, and it should say get a free quote. I can also copy and paste the one above which we created, but I like this approach better. So basically there are many different ways that you can do this. So it's really all up to you to decide which option works best for you. And now that that's finished, we have to focus on these questions because, as I said, they're going to consume most of our time. So let's start with creating our default state. So I'm going to jump inside back to my questions, and I'm going to close this in, bring it back to 0, and then bring all of these up a little bit. Something like this, so you can just imagine, and let's actually position them by eyeballing. 40 from here. Let's bring this down to the line, so I'm going to zoom in so we can see the line right here. Make sure 40 down, and basically they are going to overlap a little bit, but it's fine. We are going to animate them either way. So this is going to be our default state. So hit Control K. This is the default state. Let's create a new state, and we're going to call it trip. or financially protected, just so that we know that it's this first one. Now on this first one, we are basically going to show this and open it up like this. In the actual course, I created something different because I moved this text down to here and then I switched places between them, but I think this option is good enough as well. Close icon, I'm going to simply rotate it like this. And finally, we have to move these down 40, for example, or even better 60. Let's do something like that. And I think that works just fine. So now that the first one is created, what we can do is go back to the default state and simply create a new state, which is called cancellation. And why I did that, because if you change to here, now you have to readjust them all over again. But if you change to here and then create new state, then you can start from this exact position for the cancellation policy. So open the cancellation policy, show your text like this, and then simply move these two down with 60 like that. Then once again, default state, click right here, new state, partners like that. And inside of the partners, I'm going to jump inside of here and simply move this down until it's at 60. And finally click right here, then here, new state, and call it custom trips. And finally, you don't need to do too much, simply show your text. And the thing I forgot to animate in all of these states are these ones. So I'm going to quickly jump between my states, partners. There we go. So it's this third one. Simply rotate it like this, and make sure to always rotate these icons to the same side so that it appears as a part of the same animation like that. So you can see that I'm rotating them to the left. So make sure if you rotate one to the left, make sure that all of them are rotated to the left. So now let's animate them, and I can hit prototype. I can select them. So question 1, I can tap on it and it's going to go to financially protected. This is going to go to, let's see, I don't really like this because I'm not able to select them. So let's see. As you can see, I cannot select this third one because it's covered by the second one. So perhaps what we can do is we can put one on top of each other. So inside of our design, inside of our default state, I'm going to put 3 on top right here, and then click 4. Let's see, for example, position it right here like that. Yeah, I think that's going to work, but we still need to position question number 1 all the way down to here. So 1, 2, 4, 3, for example, just for these sections, and so that we are able to actually select them. Let's see, 3 and 4, actually let's put it on top. So actually just reverse the order the other way around like this. Question number 2 and number 1. I think that's going to work fine. Let's see if we switch them in these. We did, but as you can see, something escaped us. Where are our states? So if we click right here, I don't know what happened. Something really buggy is going on right here. As you can see, cancellation is here, partners are here, custom trips is here, basically I think I would have to do them one more time, So I really don't know what happened, because you can see in some of them they are here, must be some XD bug. You can see that the icon escaped all the way to here somewhere, God knows where, somewhere down here. So what I would do is, with this new order like this, so 4 3 2 1, I will recreate the animation which I already showed you, so I don't bore you too much once again, and then I'm going to come back when I do that, and we're going to finish off this animation. Okay, so now that I've done that and everything is working as it should, so if I take you back, so financially protected, cancellation, partners, and custom work, and I think that just because I changed places in the default state, all of them went crazy for some Adobe XD reason, but it doesn't matter. Let's now move on with the animations themselves. So finally, in the default state, jump to prototype, open up questions, and what I'm going to do is select the first one, click right here, and I'm going to move on to financially protected. Second one, click on it. I'm going to move on to cancellation. Third one, I'm going to move on to partners. And finally, fourth one, I'm going to move on to custom trips. Ease in out 0.6 seconds and auto animate for all of them. Then we can close this, go to financially protected, which is our open state. Now for the number one, I can click and we are going to go to default state, because once they click here, it's going to take them back to closed state where all of them are closed and not to any other state. So just make sure to pay attention to that. Question number two, once again, selected here, it's going to go to cancellation. Number three is going to be partners. And finally, number four is going to be custom trips. And this is one more thing about Adobe XD that I don't really understand and I really do hate, is that we have to recreate all of these all of the time instead of it remembering what we did the first time. So this is financially protected, because now the number two is open, it's going to go back to default state. This is the number three, which is your partners, and finally this is the number four, which is going to go to custom trips. And let's deal now with the partners. So once again, number one is going to go to financially protected. Number two is going to go to cancellation policy. Let's see, yep. Number three, because it's opened. Let's see if it changed something. So number two should go to cancellation. I don't know why I didn't select it. So one more bug. Choose your partners. So let's see, go back to default state because it's open right here. And finally, number four should go to custom trips. And let's deal with the last state, which is the custom state. So number one, it should go to financially protected. This should go to cancellation policy. This should go to partners. And finally, the number four should go to default state. Go back to default state and hit preview. And finally, let's see what we created right here first of all, because I want to check if it works as it should. So when I click right here, you can see that it opens and this icon right here is rotating. When I click right here, you can see that it opens, and when I click to close it, it takes us back to the original state. Same thing right here. As you can see, it doesn't animate here because it doesn't have to, but this still works. So you can see that our icons are rotating nicely and everything is working as it should. So let's go back to the start and one more time explore what we've done. So we have created these, they look great. This button works as it should, this one as well. When I click right here, we can see that we have this nice scroll group, and I can click to close it. And finally, when I click here, it animated everything as it should. Then we have these cards like this. We have this, and we have these cards animating once again really nicely. And when you click, it's going to transition between these different states. Same with this button, with this button, and with our top destinations, we have these nice animations. And when I click right here, it's going to transition between these states. We have this. So when I click on the Travelers Love Us, And these testimonials, you can see that it takes us from state to state and it flips these numbers from 1 to 4. Here we have these nice hover effects and they look really nice and subtle. And finally, for these, as I already showed you, everything works as it should with this button. Subscribe works, and finally that's it. So I really hope you liked this series, because this is the last video from this series. And just remember, if you enroll in a course either through the course page or through the membership page, you're going to get all of these additional pages, all of these additional icons, resources, how to do responsive design, how to do competitor analysis, design brief and design brief templates. So much more information about this particular course. Plus, if you choose to enroll in my membership, you're going to get access to all of these additional courses. So everything I have created, practice files, including this practice file that you're looking at right here, and design products, as well as the mentorship and access to the Facebook group. Thank you for watching this video, and I really hope you found some value in it. If you did, make sure to press that like button. Make sure to subscribe, because I upload new videos here on the channel every single week on design, passive income techniques, motivation and more. So make sure to check that out and make sure that you are subscribed. Also, don't forget to check out the course. Links are going to be down in the description below for that massive discount. Just remember, enter coupon code YouTube to get that massive discount, or you can simply go to my membership and get all of my courses, products, mentorship, Facebook group and much more there by simply getting that membership. Also, don't forget to check out the video playlist. Link is going to be down in the description below for everything that I'm mentioning in these videos. Thank you for watching and take care.